David Koresh was born as Vernon Wayne Howell in Houston, Texas on August 17, 1959. His mother, Bonnie Holdman, was only 14 years old when she gave birth to him, and Koresh's grandparents ended up eventually raising him. When David was younger, children would tease him for being dyslexic and gave him the nickname Mr. Retardo. David was obsessed with rock and roll. When he was in his early 20s, he moved to Hollywood, California, with hopes of becoming a rock star. In 1981, David Koresh moved to Waco, Texas, where he joined the Branch Davidians. Benjamin Roden was the originator of the Branch Davidian group, an apocalyptic religious movement founded in 1955. David Koresh played guitar and sang in church services at the Mount Carmel Center. This was the sect's headquarters outside of Waco. Benjamin Roden died in 1978. David Koresh studied biblical prophecy under Lois Roden, who was Benjamin Roden's widow. By the end of 1983, David Koresh had gained a group of followers and had separated from Lois's organization to form a new organization, the Branch Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Association. It wasn't until 1987, after Lois Roden had died, that David Koresh filed a document claiming to be the president of the Branch Davidian Seventh-day Adventist Association, even though he had been leading a competing group for several years. Koresh and some of his followers went to Mount Carmel Center and engaged in a shootout with George Roden, who was the son of Lois and Benjamin Roden. This eventually resulted in Koresh's group occupying the land. George Roden had been opposed by Koresh's relationship with his mother and felt that Koresh had brainwashed her. During the fight, Roden was shot in the chest and hands. Koresh was tried for attempted murder and was let go after a mistrial. Koresh, whose name was still Vernon Howell, filed a petition in California State Superior Court on May 15, 1990, to legally change his name for publicity and business purposes to David Koresh. On August 28, 1990, Judge Robert Martinez granted this petition. His first name, David, symbolized a lineage directly to the biblical King David, for whom the new Messiah would descend. Koresh is the biblical name for Cyrus the Great, a Persian king who is named the Messiah for freeing Jews from the Babylonian captivity. As time went on, David Koresh started to gain more followers. David Koresh's teachings included the practice of spiritual weddings. This practice would enable him to have sexual encounters with what he would call God-chosen female followers of all ages. David Koresh fathered at least a dozen children with members other than his legal wife. He was said to have multiple wives and had at least 17 children. Koresh claimed to his followers that he had cracked the code of the 7 seals of the Book of Revelation, which predicted events leading to the apocalypse. Koresh also told his followers that the Lord willed the Davidians to build an army of God. As a result, they started stockpiling weapons. On February 28, 1993, in response to the growing reports that the Davidians had indeed been stockpiling illegal weapons at their compound, the Mount Carmel Center, in preparation for the end of the world, the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms agents raided the property. Their goal was to search the premises and arrest David Koresh for unlawful weapons possession, but the plan did not go as expected. It resulted in 4 federal agents and 6 Branch Davidians dying in a chaotic shootout. It was not clear who fired the first shot. The FBI then became embroiled in a 51-day standoff with David Koresh at the compound. During this time, negotiators arranged for the release of 35 Branch Davidians, including 21 children. None of the 21 children are released during the 51-day siege of the Mount Carmel compound were David Koresh's children. On April 19, 1993, the FBI attempted to lure David Koresh and his followers out. Agents took decisive action that many critics would later call extreme and unwarranted. The whole scene was broadcast live on national news. The FBI rammed the building with tanks and launched a tear gas assault. To many surprise, the structure caught fire, and 76 Branch Davidians, which included 28 children, died in the flames. The The cause of the fire is still debated to this very day. David Koresh's body was found in the ashes of the compound. His skull had been broken into pieces. Authorities would not say if Koresh, who was 33 at the time of his death, had been killed or if he committed suicide. The bullet wound was in the center of his forehead and appeared to be the cause of death. After the raid, the Branch Davidians essentially vanished as a community. As years passed, a few of the group's members slowly moved back to the Mount Carmel site. Clive Doyle, whose daughter, one of Koresh's wives, had died in the fire, took on the role of preacher for the group. In addition to Doyle's congregation, a second group of Davidians settled on the site of the disaster. They built a church atop the charred foundations of the original compound and placed plaques with the names of Davidians who had died in the raid. Now calling themselves Branch, the Lord of our righteousness, the group is led by Charles Pace, who became a Davidian in 1973 but left Mount Carmel after Koresh's rise. Charles Pace sees himself as the legitimate successor to Lois Roden, the previous prophetess of the Branch Davidians, and believes David Koresh corrupted the group's message. Clive Doyle left Mount Carmel in 2006 over conflicts with Pace and his followers. According to a 2013 report by NPR, he remained in Waco and continued to hold Bible study weekly with Sheila Martin, another Branch Davidian survivor. As of February 2023, the two branches' website is still live online. In a bizarre aftermath and a strange twist of events, David Koresh's mother, Bonnie Clark Halderman, who was 60 at the time, was found murdered on Friday afternoon in January 2009 at the home of her sister, 54-year-old Beverly Clark. Clark and her sister were the only two people in the house when the deputies arrived. Authorities found a knife they believed to have been used in the slaying. Beverly Clark was charged with the murder of her own sister. Beverly Clark was found incompetent to stand trial for Halderman's murder. She was transferred to a facility until the time that she could become competent for trial. According to court records, every few years she is returned to Henderson County for a competency hearing. So who exactly was David Koresh? Did he really believe that he was the second coming? Did he really believe every word that he preached to his followers? Or was he just a really good con man? That is for you to decide.